Okay, I was relieved when I saw that the young ladies over to my left were only doing landscapes and not portraits. I'm grateful to be involved in the Engage 2009 seminar here, and particularly with the subject that Dan sort of suggested I might address. I met Dan a while ago and he asked if I could be involved in this, and it was my great pleasure. Not only because of the sort of experiences which underpin that title of what I'll talk about now, but because since I retired I've been involved in still in some humanitarian relief operations, notably after Cyclone Larry, and I'm also on the board of a professional services company which, as part of our repertoire, we have an aid business which works for AusAid, USAID in the United States, DFID in the UK, and the tentacles spread out over many of the present high-profile developing countries where there are significant aid challenges. So being on the board of that company means I get to hang out with engineers quite a bit, and that's entirely to my great honour and pleasure. I'm going to speak for a certain amount of time, and I'm going to try to keep you close to your set timings, but I want to leave a little bit of time at the end so that we can have the lights up and you can quiz me on stuff you think I should have mentioned or that particularly interests you. I'm delighted to be back in Melbourne. I come down here all the time, but there was one occasion a while ago when I was either still the Australian of the Year or not long finished being it. I was actually down here for a one-day game over at the MCG. I was a spectator watching, and I had to leave the game partway through because in one of the theatres in Melbourne CBD, they'd taken over the theatre. The Australia Day Council had taken over the theatre, and they were going to announce the new Australian of the Year. So my wife and I ducked out of the cricket, jumped in a car over to the theatre, and it's packed, you can imagine. An auditorium a bit like this, but absolutely packed. And the front row was given over to the sorts of people whose names might get read out, you see. So as my wife and I are edging into our seats, we excuse ourselves to Minister Larry Anthony from the government. You see, he was the portfolio minister for this. And then we squeezed past this other fella, and I looked at him, I thought, geez, that looks like Leighton Hewitt. And it was. And, and he was with this quite attractive, athletic-looking girl, and I said to my wife, who's the young woman with Leighton? She kicked me in the shin. She said, that's Aussie Kim Clijsters, isn't it? So I saw the whole event unfold, and I had my eye on the clock because that one-day game was still going. And I'd said to the driver who dropped us, listen mate, you be in the pole position when I come out, because we're back to the MCG with the speed of 1,000 startled gazelles, and I'm going to watch the rest of this game. He said, it won't be me, it'll be another driver. I said, well, the same advice please, get that guy in position. Anyway, we finished, and I sort of got my wife, come on, we've got to go. And we raced outside, and I started to do that eye contact thing with the various drivers who were waiting for their passengers to come out, and there's this Commonwealth car driver who's sort of making eyes at me, so that's our fella. I get in the car, I said, let's go mate, I'm in a hurry. And he started off, and he's not going to the MCG. And I said, excuse me, why are we going this way? He said, this is the way to the airport, Minister. Oh. I said, Minister. He said, yeah, you're Minister Larry Anthony, aren't you? I said, no, I'm not. He said, but I'm his driver. So we went back to the theatre, and there's Larry Anthony, you know, looking at it. So, my association with engineers in far off places that are under pressure was in South Vietnam. That's where I started, because I was a young infantry platoon commander, and we had lots and lots of military engineers with us. Now those guys did stuff for us, but a lot of what they did was actually part of the Hearts and Minds program, albeit in that war context for the South Vietnamese. So anything from church buildings to schools to wells to roads, the wherewithal, the infrastructure to try to create what I deem to be social wealth for people under pressure was part of the mission of the Australian Army there. And we were very proud of what they did. And they did it, of course, working through hardship and a lot of danger. I frequently had some role to protect these fellas when they were doing things. They were on a road building activity, and of course that meant working out near the jungle areas, and that's where the VC were. So I had control of them. I had to protect them. So I was in charge not of their technical work but of their security with my infantry platoon, and I had some tanks and some armoured personnel carriers. The engineers, in the usual way, you know, they loved using those earth-moving machines, and they pushed up a huge, like a fort. The Romans would have been delighted. It was like a wall of earth, 10 feet high and perfectly round with a baffle entrance. And at night, all the stuff would come in from the road making back inside this compound. And us guys would man the barricades, we would defend them. And during the day while they were working, we were out sneaking around in the jungle trying to keep people from creeping up on them. But you know, when the engineers pushed stuff up, they disturbed all of the fauna, and creepy crawlies in particular. And my lads got a giant snake from somewhere. I mean, this was a python, a big python, much longer than this desk apparatus here. I actually think being a professor there's probably a keyboard here that you operate, I don't know, but the snake was a monster snake, and the boys, against my better judgment, said they wanted to keep it, and I said, let it go, and they said, but it'll then slither back into the jungle. I said, yeah, that's good. Then they said, but we walk through the jungle during the day, and the snake probably doesn't. All right, you can hang on to the snake, but we're not going to keep this thing. They put it into a tea chest, great big plywood thing with a hasp and staple on it, just a tea chest made out of plywood, and over here, big thing. And the next day, my big boss, the brigadier, the bloke who was in charge of all the Australians in our province, flew in by helicopter to inspect my little empire. I was like a little Napoleon. He arrived, he gets off. And do you know how it is when there's an entourage? They're all twittering around behind the principal fella. And I'm leading this dear old boy around. I thought he was a lovely old gentleman. He seemed very grandfatherly. He's certainly much younger than I am now then. But I mean, when I was a young 22-year-old, this bloke seemed ancient. Anyway, I'm taking him around and showing him things, and he said to me as we're going past, what's in that tea chest? And my eyes flickered, you know. I should have said, snake! I didn't. I said, you know, I just sort of stumbled and mumbled, and he thought he was onto contraband. So before I could stop him, he whipped over there and threw the lid open, and the bloody python came out at about 1,000,000 miles an hour. He screamed, and he tried to get away from the serpent, you know, because this thing's, you know, and he's stumbling and crashing and falling over things that the engineers had left lying around, not me. You know, rolls of wire and clumps of star pickets and big iron things. Anyway, he kept falling over things and screaming, and it seemed every time he looked up, the snake was sort of... Anyway, it was terrible. I ran to his side. The soldiers went and captured the snake again, and the brigadier used the most disgusting language to me. You would have been ashamed of him. I was. Anyway, they put him back on his helicopter with his heart exploding through his chest. And all of the sycophantish staff who'd come with him, they were all looking out of the helicopter at me, sort of, whoa, you know. I got to be a 4-star general, which is even senior to a brigadier, but boy, it didn't look really likely at that stage, I promise you. Later on in the same year, I was, having put that task behind me, so to speak, I was minding my own business when a murder occurred in the organisation to which I belonged, and I was a witness, so I had to take some time off from my combat duties to go and give evidence at the trial. Anyway, where they put me was in amongst, this is just as a sort of a lodger, they put me in amongst an engineer squadron, a construction squadron. These were people doing fantastic work for the Vietnamese, and these, so I was simply there marking time, waiting to give evidence at the trial, but I became mates with all these engineers. Therefore, in that forced hiatus period of a few weeks, started to understand what makes engineers tick. And it was a sort of a masculine love affair which has lasted a very long time, and meant that when Cardno, the company on whose board I now am, asked me to join, I sort of leapt at it, because it was once again to reacquaint with the way that engineers can create social wealth. Our engineers went off to Namibia in 1989, when it was then still just about under South Africa, but looking to be independent, and our engineers were cleaning up the detritus of insurgent wars, minefields. So these ladies who've been off to Cambodia will know that the scourge of a country which is just trying to keep its head above water is those horrible so-and-sos who think that the way to security is to put mines all over the country. We did it in Vietnam, wasn't very smart there either. Our engineers did a great job there, as you would expect. But I really started to enjoy that extra strand of what I might call humanity that a military force can bring to the resolution of a security problem when East Timor came along. And that comes to the title, Peacekeepers, the Military and the Birth of a Nation. And that's shorthand for what we were able to do, privileged to do, in 1999 and 2000, which was the start of a process leading to the world's newest small country. The history of East Timor, very quickly, 16th century, the Portuguese colonised the place in that great Portuguese maritime period, where they first of all came ashore at a place called Akusi in what is now West Timor. So there's an enclave down there that is part of East Timor, but then they moved up further to the east and colonised that half of the island. In 1975, after those centuries of being the colonial power, the Portuguese withdrew. 1974, the government changes to a government in Portugal which says no more colonial possessions. 1975, effectively, East Timor becomes a bit of a vacuum. November the 28th, it unilaterally declared its independence, but only 9 days later, the Indonesians, led by, quote, freedom fighter volunteers, occupied the place. And that maintained until 1999, when, after some diplomatic and political wrangling, President Habibie said, okay, the UN should come in and hold a plebiscite. So in May, the UN arrives, the world media floods into East Timor, and then we follow a process of the lead up to the ballot in August. In August, a huge turnout of East Timorese vote, and then in New York in early September, Kofi Annan announces the outcome, which is virtually 80% of people opted for independence. This was a blow, of course, but it was unexpected by the opposing political side, which was the pro-integration side in East Timor, those who wanted to remain with Indonesia. Upshot of all this is there is an exacerbation of some of the politically motivated violence which had occurred during '99. It really takes off, and people are getting chopped up and houses burnt down and whole families and villages and communities abducted and taken out of East Timor and resettled somewhere else. It was like an orgy of violence. On the back of that, there was great international pressure for the UN or a coalition of willing nations to do something about it, and rapidly, with the backing of the Security Council, a coalition of the willing was assembled. Australia were the lead nation in that, and I was the military person commanding the force. I went over there first on the 19th of September, and flying into Dili in a little RAAF jet with I had some SAS guys in there with me, and also had some representatives from some of the coalition partners in the venture. And as we were coming in and getting ready to land at Dili, looking out, all I could see all over the country, and then particularly Dili, were the smoke pillars of burning suburbs and residences and official buildings and ordinary homes. And as you got closer, you could see the fires themselves, and you could just see the devastation. It reminded me of aerial pictures of towns that had been bombed during, say, World War II. Landing at Dili Airport, the devastation was not confined just to the town itself. The airport had been trashed, and there was a great posse of international media and some Indonesian officers on the tarmac, and off we went on the start of the, I'm going to say, adventure. It was an adventure, a very serious one though. I left the SAS on the aeroplane. They had, you know, their sort of knives in their eyebrows and pistols secreted in strange places. They were ready to go, but I decided then and there that we would be very much into what I might call the moral persuasion mode. Yes, of course, we would be armed and very ready to react to criminal behaviour, but we were, every time we could, put pressure on the Indonesians and all others to behave properly. So I left the armed bodyguards aboard the aeroplane, went into town, came back with, nutted out the deal we needed for the next day when the force arrived. This mission went from the 20th of September through to the 17th of February, about 187 days or whatever that was. And then my force left. I was the sort of last to leave of that force, and a UN force took over from us and remains there in various guises still today, but the country became independent on the 20th of May 2002. Our mission when we went there on the 20th of September was to restore peace and security. This is the UN Security Council mission. It was to restore peace and security, and note this, ladies and gentlemen, by any means. This was an extraordinarily strong adjunct to the mission. It meant, hypothetically, I could use bombers and fighters and tanks and warships shelling and doing all those sorts of things. It basically gave me warfighting permission, which I knew I wouldn't need, or hoped I wouldn't need, and certainly intended not to use. But it was a very strong mission and probably reflected the UN's frustration at things like Rwanda and former Yugoslavia, where with more constrictive missions, the UN had proven itself not to be as effective. The other part of my job given by the Security Council was to assist the United Nations mission on the ground and to enable the transition of my force to a UN Blue Beret force. Classically, they take much longer to prepare, to obtain from contributing countries and to put into the nation in question. You've only got to look at Darfur as an example there, where the African Union in the end had to put its soldiers in there, and the UN forces, as far as I'm aware, still assembling. I took from that UN mission, restore peace and security, assist the United Nations and enable transition. There was some stuff in there that wasn't in the UN mission, but was hugely important. I had to help the East Timorese. That wasn't in the mission. You know, I hate the thought that you would operate in a manner which treated the East Timorese as being objects, a commodity, some material influence on your mission, instead of being real live people who were looking at us as other real live people who could be good, bad or indifferent. So helping the East Timorese was something that was paramount. We first had to establish peace and security, but we had to help the East Timorese. And that meant also helping the NGOs, non-government organisations. There were a whole bunch of seminal events which sort to me exemplified the difference between what the East Timorese experience of the military had been under all those years of occupation and what they were thinking about the international force. Bishop Bello had a service of Thanksgiving in the Dili Cathedral, and it was attended to the packed to the rafters stage of the cathedral, and thousands of people in the forecourt. I was there. I just took a small group of officers down to just sit in the background and watch and enjoy the service. But he caught on to me and he dragged me up the front and put me in the front pew. The whole service went off in Tetum. I didn't understand a word of Tetum. I could hear the words INTERFET, that was our title, being mentioned occasionally, but I didn't really know what he was saying. The only disturbance on the service was when a Japanese journalist asked me for an interview during the consecration, and I said, well, you have to go back, and, you know, I can't do it quite now. But the thing that really struck me as the uplifting moment was when the Timorese sang. When you heard these people sing in a very full-throated way, happy-go-lucky people who had survived 25 very difficult years, when you heard them sing in their devotions, it showed you that their cohesion and their community spirit, and I guess their faith, had been huge elements in their triumph as a people. Then we had the Tour of Duty concert. John Farnham and Gina Jeffries and James Blundell, Kylie Minogue all came to Dili and did a giant concert for us that was televised on 2 networks here in Australia. And to me, the abiding image there, the one that I carry, isn't so much of the artists, although that was wonderful. It was the sight of the sort of giant mosh pit out the front of the stage where thousands of military people were. No seating for them, they stood up for the concert. There they are in their uniforms. The majority of them are Aussies, so they're in their camouflage uniforms with their rifles slung over their backs, and rocking and rolling to whatever's coming off the stage, enjoying the hell out of it. And do you know that I started to notice this almost immediately? Lots and lots of East Timorese came to this concert, including lots of kids. Now the kids, you know, the Timorese are not big people. The kids, of course, are quite tiny. And here they are in amongst the legs of all these military people, boys and girls, and they can't see, so time after time an Aussie would sweep them up and sit the kiddie on the shoulders. So we would see hundreds of times throughout the audience the soldier doing this, you know, rock and roll, with a kid, big grin on the kid's face, up on the soldier's shoulders, and I thought, that's pretty good. We played a soccer game against the East Timorese. We had Italians and Brazilians as part of my force. I thought, we win. We got Italians, we got Brazilians. And we didn't try to lose, but the Timorese beat us. They were very cunning. They played at about 2 in the afternoon. It was about 44 degrees in the water bag, and the humidity was giant. And all these lumbering Aussies, we were, and Brazilians and Italians, they were like whippets and we were like distressed grizzly bears, and they won. The flowback of refugees, watching people come back having been forcibly evacuated, and then when they started to flow back into the country, it was a sign to me that these were people for whom family, home, their ancestral ties, the roots that they had were extraordinarily strong, and they weren't going to be resettled and re-educated. The return of Janana Guzmao, When I first met Janana Guzmao, I thought with this very quiet, almost shy man, admittedly he was put in a room with me, so there's just the two of us, and I can be a little overbearing. But Janana's there, and I talking to this fellow and sort of leaning forward to hear him. And I thought, wow, this is the leader that they are looking forward to being back amongst the people. He is the natural first leader of East Timor, the free East Timor. And he's so quiet, this isn't going to work. Anyway, I kept those thoughts to myself, and a little later on the same day, we'd smuggled him back into East Timor using, again, of course, the SAS, and got him to say this was a big surprise, and all the East Timorese who could make it to the Governor's Palace were told, get down there, something big is happening. And it was, of course, the return of Janana. And when the man walked out and the crowd went mad, absolutely mad, they saw their iconic leader up on the dais, and they went mad, and he stood there and the microphones are on, and in this booming voice, I can't do it because it was in Tetum, but in this booming voice, for about 30 minutes of full-on rhetoric, he had the crowd alternatively cheering and screaming with joy and weeping for those who'd gone before and who'd been killed in the struggle. And then again cheering as he brought up some of the other military figures and roaring their sort of joy at their deliverance. Kenyan engineers. The Kenyan engineers introduced me to the old siege term, gabions. Now, a lot of you engineering folk will know what a gabion is. I remembered it a bit from my military training. A gabion is what you would do if you were a legionary running forward. Here's a ditch in front of you which you must cross. So you fill up something like a sack or with stuff, and you throw it into the ditch, and then you can run over because you've filled up the ditch. Well, a gabion is also filled with rocks and used to reinforce the bedding or the washaway points on a primitive road. And the Kenyan engineers were magnificent. You know why? Because they didn't have plant and bulldozers and front-end loaders and big dump trucks. They just had their hands, their strong backs, and their willingness to have a crack. So we put them up on some of these terribly vulnerable and primitive roads that led up into the high ground, and they got busy with the gabions. And every time I went to see these guys, they were happy. And they knew that the first time the wet season would strike the road, after a while, their gabions would disappear off. And their attitude was, oh, we'll just do them again then. This is good stuff. The Kenyans also have got a mighty spirit about them. Another singing race, did you know that? People who visited Africa will know it. I went to visit the Kenyans inside Dili. They had a little base there, and I went there and I found them, first of all, at a church service. And in African, their music was religious, but beautiful, full-throated, hundreds of them, all singing in beautiful harmony and make you feel the hair, such as I had left, was standing up. Then I finished there, or the church service finishes, and I'm held back inside. It's time for me to go back to do other things. I walk out of the chapel, I walk with their officers, and they've gathered the whole of the Kenyans, not in strict military ranks, no, they're in a mob. I think, hello, what's happening here? Am I to be torn limb from limb? You know, because it's a mob. No, I was encouraged to walk into the middle of the mob, and then in a great mob around me, clustered right in, they walked me a couple of 100 metres from the chapel to the front gate of their compound, stamping and singing tribal music. And this was a great honour accorded to me as the chief. So I just walked along being crushed in by all these magnificent black men who were singing I didn't understand any of it, but you knew the honour that was being done. 22 nations in INTERFET from all over the world. And I think the Aussies, it was humbling for us because we're military professionals, but we're very new at this diplomatic stuff. And we had to get that right to pay honour to these people who'd come such a long way. But undoubtedly the great thing about being present at the birth of this nation was actually when I left, which was, as I pointed out, the 17th of February in 2000. I'd handed over the mission signed a document and handed it over to a Filipino general in a blue beret who was commanding the force that had come in to replace us. Sergio Vieira de Mello, wonderful man, Brazilian diplomat, probably a future Secretary General of the UN, but sadly murdered, assassinated in Iraq. Sergio was there, Bishop Bello was there, Guzmao, Ramos Horta, the Filipino bloke and myself, and we signed this mission over. And then I went outside with Janana and we did a bit of hugging and it was all quite emotional. And then down to the jetty. This is the jetty where when I arrived, thousands of East Timorese were lined up to be forcibly put onto ships and taken away. Now it was full of people, but they were there, they were in their home and they were saying goodbye to this military force. As I walked up onto the gangplank of this Australian Navy ship for the departure, I said goodbye to the Aussies who'd looked after me and they were staying on for 1 or 2 more days. And some of them were staying on for months. But they were just a tiny minority. Most of the people were East Timorese. And as we got on the ship, the people were cheering their heads off. And I thought how wonderful it is to be part of a military force which is leaving a group of people who actually love you at that time. You hadn't outstayed your welcome, you'd gone there for a totally positive reason and you'd left them saying you did well. You're all of an age where you will remember back to 99-2000 and the extraordinary support we got from the Australian people, indeed a blessing. It's something I'll never forget. But I consider that just as the Army, the Australian Army, and all of those friendly countries who have armies and with whom we dealt during INTERFET, just as we have to remain ready for the grim task, sometimes lethal task, of defending Australia and its values, just as we must do that, so we must look forward to those too rare opportunities and the honour that awaits you when you get to help people by protecting them and giving them a positive pathway to a peaceful future. People aren't really interested in ideological shouting matches. They are particularly interested in living in safety and security so that their community, their society, their culture and their values are able to progress the way they want them to. And if the military can, by its work, assist that to come about, then you remember those as probably in a better frame of mind than you do when you have to apply the hard edge of what the military does in some far off place. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very aware that we're on a tight timetable here. That's the end of my prepared remarks about how we had the honour of helping in East Timor. But if we could put the house lights up, there might be time for 1 or 2 questions.
Thanks, Pak Mangku. So, Buntan, I've just got a question for you now. You have a bit of a different perspective from Jody. You're Cambodian and have studied in Cambodia, but you've chosen to work with communities, and you work with a number of those through your position as the country manager with Live and Learn. Can you tell us a little bit about your motivations to pursue this line of work?
Thank you. Yes, related to my motivation or experience related to before I become the country manager and I work. Just I graduated in 1999 with the Agricultural National School. It's called Prelip, and during that time I was offered a job at the technical agriculture, and without the internship and volunteer, it was so hard work to work for community. So after that, I just spent 1 year with one company. It's called Crop Production that run by the French company, And after I had to decide again that I had to go back to Phnom Penh and for to volunteer with one organization is called Muluk Bai Tong and local NGO. So I volunteer for around 8 months, and after this the executive director and one foreigner called named Amanda Bradley, they observed and they saw my hard work, and also they gave me a position is called project assistant for school environmental education. So after I have experience with the volunteer and some work experience, before I volunteer, I was very difficult to use a computer and how to type, how to send email, very difficult. But after volunteering program, I can gain a lot of experience and how to work, what is it the administrative work, how to run the project. And when I became a project assistant for school environmental education with Muluk Bai Tong, it's called School Eco Club. Yes, I could do very well, and after 3 months they promoted me as a project officer. And yes, I was very happy with this position, and I could gain a lot of experience from this field. And beside my job or my responsibility with the school environmental education, I also spend my time with other projects, like I go through some project, Mang and Environment project, we call Buddhism and Environment project, and other projects, so I can gain. And after this, I spent around over 4 years with the Muluk Bai Tong, just so I could gain different aspect of the working experience. So, and after this, I should thinking about continue my study. If I continue to work for the community and spend like over 4 years, maybe I cannot upgrade my degree. So I decided I asked Muluk Bai Tong to resign and to work for one organization. It's called ICC, International Cooperation for Cambodia. So it is based in Phnom Penh. So I have some time to study to continue my bachelor degree and my master degree. So, but unfortunately, I work for that organization just for only 1 year. Yeah, only 1 year. And that organization focus on social work. And what I like is for environment. I like natural. I like forest. I like animal. Actually, sustainable development. So after 1 year, I decided to come to work for Live and Learn. With Live and Learn give me a very good opportunity and like a different approach how to work with the community. So when I work with Live and Learn in 2005, I was a project officer, but I work with 5 provinces around the Lesab that have Kampong Chnang, Posat, Bat Lombong, Siem Reap, and Kampong Thom province. So I work closely with the school, community, we call commune, and Ministry of Environment, Department of Environment. So with working with different target audience, we have to be flexible as a facilitator, how to work with the government, how to work with the school, how to work with the community. So they have different aspects. Like for example, work with the government, we cannot again with them. We have to do how we can say we just show what is how we can change them. We provide some we develop a creative idea or a very good tool for them and to see, and we test with the community and with and after the government, they can see that it's good tool or good material that they can use. So we like work parallel with the the government. So we work closely with the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport. So, and after this, I was maybe after 3 years, I was promoted as a country manager for Live and Learn, like now. So, we, even though sometimes I really stressed with my position, country manager, because I have to coordinate to manage everything in my office in Cambodia. But what I like, what I want to spend my time also with the community when I become like a higher person. So my time so limited with the community. So I still like working for community. So, but even though I also conduct in-house training for my staff, my colleagues, how to work, how to facilitate with the community, how to work with the government, how to work with the other partner NGOs. And yes, so still happy with this. So I hope that I can continue with my job with the other NGO and other community in Cambodia or other countries, especially with the EWB. Yeah, EWB, I think, a very good partners because Live and Learn, we focus on environmental education and sustainable development like ecotourism, livelihood, agriculture. But the education, we need the appropriate technology. So it is a very good opportunity to cooperate and to partner with the EWB. Yes, thank you.
Just moving on with a few more details about the floating toilet project, Jody, I'm just wondering if you can brief us on where you're at and what you're working on.
Okay, so I mentioned before I was an Australian volunteer in '98. I was actually posted in a floating community. So those were the days when I used to actually work in the communities. And one of the things you notice very quickly when you're in the community is there's a lack of toilet. So it gets pretty hard when you're doing the field work. So early on I tried to actually, well, being an environmental scientist, not an engineer, I tried to make a toilet, but it wasn't really that successful, I found later. So years later, when I was working back on the Tong Il Lake, I went and looked at the toilet and was pretty disappointed. But then, as fate would have it, I bumped into one of the EWB staff, Stuart, who's now in Vietnam. But that led us to Dan and EWB and a really wonderful partnership, which is really trying to deal with something that it's not just a Cambodia issue. There's people living in floating communities all around the world, and for some reason it's this thing that's been too difficult for all these massive donors, all these governments around the world. They haven't dealt with the idea that people who live on boats or live over rivers or over the ocean need toilets too. And so it seems to be a kind of logical thing to try to do, but nobody's been trying to do it. So the partnership with EWB has been, over the last few years, getting to know the situation better. We're not in a rush to try to answer this because I figure if it's something that nobody's done yet, it's going to be pretty difficult and, as we've said before, take time to do things right. So over the last 3 years, we've been going through some community consultations. We've got some pilot communities we're working with, getting a much better understanding of the communities themselves, some of the water quality issues, but then we're linked directly with EWB for the, what's it called now? Technical Assistance Network, and we actually have EWB volunteers with Live and Learn in Cambodia, and we're trying to prototype different models of toilets that will be appropriate for the community, that they can actually build themselves, which is really important because cost-wise and ownership-wise, it has to be something the community can do. And that's creating difficulties because, of course, engineers, they want to give us the best possible solution. The best possible solution and the most appropriate should be the same. But what we consider in Australia the best isn't always the most appropriate when you get to Cambodia. So that's been a really important learning part of the process for us in Cambodia, giving information across, and also the information we get back is trying to find how we make it appropriate. And I think that's one of the biggest things about these EWB conferences, which I've been fortunate to come to a few of them. It's really about making things appropriate. It's not just about engineering. It's about taking away those other borders and actually making it appropriate for all different situations. So technically, I can't really tell you much about exactly what's going on, but I can tell you that we're pre-testing a model. The first one we developed was too big. Like, great idea, but 3 holes, so for different kinds of waste, I suppose, but too big for the area we have in the houses, the floating houses. So there's a lot of technical issues. We're not really that close yet, but we've got some prototypes happening.
So just elaborating on that a little further on your experience in working with EWB, just wondering, I guess, how's it been in terms of the role that they fill and some of the challenges and successes, and perhaps some of the opportunities it's opened up for your organisation?
Sensational. It's an amazing, like Buntan was saying, for an environmental education organisation that works in communities, to have that kind of technical network that you can link with, it's just an amazing compliment. What I'm trying to do is, like, we've got a new Indonesia team sitting in the audience, and we've got our team in the Maldives who had a link with EWB in the past. And for me, I see all of our live and learn activities that we could gain having partnerships with EWB. So I think it's, like I was saying, it's such a positive thing. It brings technical skills with local community input, so you can do grassroots activities. So.
That's good to hear. And any particular challenges that you've come across?
Toilets are pretty different.
Yeah, with our volunteers using them, or yeah.
Not really.
Yeah,
it's just
that's
a
good.
time thing. I think it's like I said before. It's people want things to happen very quickly.
Microphone.
They don't happen that quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So this is a question, I guess, for Putu and Patmanku, is just if you can explain a little bit about the water situation in Tenganan, and perhaps elaborate a little bit on the management body you've got at the moment, the UPSAB.
You want me or Pak Mangku? Okay. Well, the situation of the water management in Tenganan was very bad before these projects come, where we have really not enough supply of water and then really unscheduled. So today there is water, and then tomorrow maybe there will be water and maybe no, and then people don't know who to ask why there is no water, and then so on. Things like that happen for maybe more than 20 years. And also for the bad thing, like what Ian said before, that part of people in Tenganan which stay in the upper location is not really have no access to water at all. So they take water by walking for more than 2 hours and then spend all the time to just taking water. And then now, after the project, we have a new pipe distribution with a good, well, we can call it like a management system, which is can manage and allocate the water based on the schedule. So then after that we can inform to the community that today this Banjar will have water, and then Tenganan will have another day, and so on. So it's much better now, and then we are looking forward to have of course better management, which with staff that can do a good work, so then the organization become well, we would like to say a professional organization, so that we can manage the water as a sustainable system for the community.
Can you, so Perhaps also talk a little about why the communities decide to take on this project. Why not just ask the government to do it for them, or another NGO for that matter?
Well, as you know, it's a problem in the country like Indonesia, maybe Cambodia, where government sometimes they say we care to the people, and then they just doing the project which is based on their mindset without looking on the root what we actually facing. So then previously there are some project which is done by the government and then really end up with the fire situation. So then this project we look at the possibility to have a community-based planning, so then we can start from the beginning what actually our problem and then what is the goal that we want to achieve. So I think that is why we would like to prefer this project than the government, because we have already bad experience with the government, and then we would like to try this one.
And just starting to wrap up now, but just wanted to know from Pat Manku exactly what his experience has been working with the EWB volunteers. We've had quite a range to Tenganan, young and old, big and small. So what value have they added to the project, and what sort of challenges and successes you've had?
Pengalaman saya, pertama-tama kami banyak menemui hal yang sangat baru. Jadi sebelum proyek direncanakan, ada penguatan kelembagaan. Kemudian dalam perencanaan, EWB dan lembaga lainnya dari Australia banyak membantu, sehingga tahapan perencanaan itu betul-betul terbangun. Kemudian Indonesia dulu banyak kira-kira oke, boleh, kalau ini tidak pas.
So firstly, through EWB there was institutional capacity building, and then step by step, each step was clear and it was taken, and it was just what they wanted, which is not what the government would have done.
Kemudian ada pipa PE yang selama ini kami belum mengenal, hanya baru mungkin melihat bagaimana keunggulan dari pipa PE dengan PVC. Kemudian kami sempat berdialog panjang dengan adanya sistem manifold. Jadi setiap banjar ada water meter, kemudian ada stop keran, ada pendistribusian sesuai dengan jumlah penduduk, di mana sesuai dengan alam tenganan ada di atas sangat jauh tinggi. Ini suatu permasalahan mendasar dulu, sehingga dengan adanya sistem manifold, setelah kita lihat, setelah kita uji coba, itu bisa memecahkan masalah.
I think I've gotten slightly lost, but I'll try. In the beginning, through EWB, they brought in the new PE pipes, which were different to the PVC pipes that the villagers had seen before. And so through the EWB project, they were able to know about these new pipe systems. And then Pat Manku was talking about the distribution of water through, which is manifold. What's manifold? Okay, as Ian says.
Kemudian yang sangat penting, apa yang kami rencanakan bersama, didialogkan kepada masyarakat, kemudian masyarakat diberikan kesempatan untuk mengajukan argumen mereka, sehingga masyarakat memahami misalnya tentang kemungkinan nantinya memelihara, kemudian nanti masyarakat yang memutuskan.
But overall, the most important thing has been community participation, the way that the community has been able to put forward their own arguments, and eventually it's the community that has decided what they wanted.
Okay, so just finally, I've got a question for each of the panel members, and that's just to talk about what your aspirations, either for your community or for your project or for your country. But we'd like you to be as succinct as possible and keep it to 1 or 2 sentences. What is your aspirations for the future?
I'd like to build a nice environmentally sustainable home in Siem Reap.
Well, I would like to have a nice management body of water in the village, which we can say a professional company.
Di samping pariwisata, kami kembali ke konsep dasar pertanian, di mana ada keseimbangan, terbinanya hubungan sesama manusia, manusia dengan upacara, manusia dengan lingkungan. Terima kasih.
Pak Mangku hopes for a balance between the environment, people, and religious ritual.
Kemudian antara pariwisata, pertanian juga.
And also a balance between agriculture and tourism.
Yeah. For me, yes. I am thinking for a long time also my vision. Yes. Okay. I would like to we call agriculture and environmental center that I would like in Cambodia, because I want to see sustainable development in Cambodia, because Cambodia we have a rich natural resources and biodiversity. So I think maybe everybody, every family should think about in environmentally friendly house.
Thank you. So we're just going to open up the floor to a few questions, but just to remind everyone, this whole conference is an opportunity to speak to guys like this and ask your questions as well. So, yeah, please engage.
Thanks again for coming. It's amazing, actually, just personally to go and visit your countries and hear the stories over there, and finally have you coming to ours so we can share our stories as well and show you a bit about Engineers Without Borders. So thank you for coming. Putu, in particular, I wanted to know, you're a young person from the village who's gone out, got a degree in architecture and studying. How many people like yourself who go out and leave the village actually come back and remain as involved as you do? Is that a unique thing, or is there a strong connection back to the place where you came from, like in your example?
Well, the situation in this village, young people like me, there are some who also have educated in the university and then now working in Denpasar, but not so many that would like to come to the village and then work in the project for the community. Well, I'm not sure why it's happened, but maybe this is because of the relation that I'm lucky because my parents still stay in the village, so there is a reason for me to visit the village in the regular time, not like the others who have parents stay outside the village. And also beside that, there is also not such effort from the community to try to involve their their young people to get involved in their plan or program about the community, because actually we have an ability to do something for the community, but there is no such yet a good will from the community council to try to get involved our our age, like we can say like that.
Yeah, we'll have to do this without the mic, so please sing out.
I was just wondering how long was the pipeline and how, where were you able to get the funds to fund the work?
Well, the total length of the pipeline is nearing the 4.5 kilometers. So the total PE pipe with several sizes range from 4 inch to 1 inch. And then this project actually an improvement from the previous project, which was done by the government, which was using a steel pipe. So then, because of the aspiration from the community to try to reach the area which is not have an access to water, so then we should make a new distribution system and then should add more pipe into the existing system. Yeah. And then with the fund, we have been assisted by EWB to write a proposal, and then they help us with the funding, I think from the Robert Christie Foundation, who have us with this project.
Thanks, Peter. And just to add to that, most of the labour, well, 99.9% was actually done by, they call Gottam Royong, which is community working for the benefit of each other, so essentially volunteer labour. And there'd be probably around 300 individuals who've done something at some stage, whether digging a hole or being more involved. So we'll just have this as the last question, if that's okay. All these speakers will actually be speaking at later on in the conference too, so please check your schedule. Thank you.
This is related to the earlier question. Pat Manku, I loved hearing your comment about the challenges of getting youth to understand their traditions and not move towards a consumer society. I'm just wanting to know more information about what methods you use to try to retain youth in the community and get them to engage with the local traditions.
Kami artinya di samping di Bali dikenal adanya mass tourism, kami membangun eco trekking. Kemudian kami juga melibatkan untuk membangun usaha penggilingan padi. Kemudian harapan kami bagaimana kami akan membangun pusat informasi kebudayaan. Di sini tempat bagi mereka untuk menggali, memahami, kemudian sebagai upaya mendidik untuk lebih memahami Tenganan.
So Pat Manko has explained a few different things. The first is through mass tourism and the development of eco-trekking as a way to get young people involved. Then through small businesses such as rice milling, that's right. And then through an information centre to try to impart traditional knowledge to the youth of the village.
Great. Thanks very much, guys. Just if you could just join me thanking our speakers today.